November 27, 2017. My name is Bill McCamley. I'm a state representative from Las Cruces and Mesilla here in New Mexico with your legislative update for the day. I want to talk about three things. So we had a meeting here in Las Cruces of the Science and Technology Interim Committee, and two of the things that got brought up were cybersecurity and climate change. So for cybersecurity, these are all of the efforts to make sure that we protect data, much of which is yours, here at the state. So we all saw what happened with the Equifax breach in the last week or so, where a bunch of people's private financial data was gotten out to whoever wants to get a hold of this stuff to commit fraud and things like that. Well, here at the state, we've got elections processes, we've got driver's license numbers and social security numbers and all those things. So how do we work to keep all of those things that are really needed secret to be secret? And that's a real issue because cybersecurity, as was pointed out by our presenters, is a very high reward, low risk thing that more and more people are starting to do. So one of the problems we've got though as a state is that we can't offer a lot of times the salary that is needed, and the Secretary of Internet Technology said, hey look, I wanted to get this guy to come in and help us with internet security, but he said I'm not going to work for a third of what I'm making now in the private sector. So we got to figure out how to address that and get more workers into this field. So that's something that CenturyLink, one of our providers down here, actually talked about. They are going to start working with New Mexico State, possibly UNM, New Mexico Tech, and Northern New Mexico in developing workforce training for cybersecurity, so we can, help our own guys get people that are trained in this, but also maybe develop a job hub here in that. Climate change was brought up. There was a group that came and presented that wants us to be completely green by 2040. They mentioned renewable portfolio standards, and we did this in New Mexico back in the early 2000s, where we said by 2020, 2022, all the electric companies, PNM, El Paso Electric, have to hit certain levels of green energy, wind, solar, geothermal, whatever you want, and they've done that. And yet other states, though, have moved to higher portfolio standards, and so that might be something that you're going to see brought up in further legislative sessions to increase that. Now, to make that happen in the long term, we're going to have to work on two things, right? Energy storage, so that the energy produced by wind when it's windy and then it's not windy anymore, you can store it. Or the energy produced by solar when it's sunny outside, when it's not sunny anymore, you can store it and use it when it's not sunny. And also transmission. So there's going to be places where we make a lot of this stuff. We need to get it to places where they don't make a lot of this stuff, and transmission is going to be a big deal with that. There was some pushback by a lot of the Republican members of the committee in terms of the climate of science, of climate change, the science of climate change, and this is a tough one because it's easy to say, well, I'm a skeptic on here, but most of the people in the world that are climate scientists agree that this is a big deal, and you see the Earth's atmosphere warming, you see sea levels rising. This is a big deal and we should address it. Lastly, I want to talk about early childhood and a couple of things. First of all, there was a presentation yesterday by Engage, which is a local Doña Ana County organization that is really making early childhood one of their biggest issues, and there's a real gap, right? We have a lack of free and subsidized early childhood education here in the state. And that's a big deal because you start to see a gap when kids develop at about 18 months between kids of college-educated parents and then working-class parents and then welfare parents, and things like the amount of vocabulary kids have. And if you don't have good free or subsidized programs, you're going to continue to see that gap all the way into school, and that's not right. That's not what America's supposed to be about. We should give everyone a fair shot, and so they want to see better coordination and more resources put into quality early childhood programs, which the state actually found to work in a report to the Legislative Finance Committee yesterday. Unfortunately, that committee also found that Child Protective Services here at the state failed to hit 7 of 8 performance goals. And these are things like speed of adoptions, number of children reunified with their parents within a year, and number of kids returning to foster care. In fact, the number of kids in protective care actually increased by 6% in the past year. And that's a huge issue. And so there's two things we need to do. Number one, we need to improve the economy. There's a direct link between the amount of jobs available, the amount of resources in a community, and how good kids do. But also, we need to focus on making sure our government agencies that do a really good job with their social workers, their protective services, all those folks have the resources they need to protect our little kids. And that means enough social workers to do the job. That means enough people in the bureaucracy to make sure no one's left out in the cold when a kid needs help. And so those are things we should really focus on, because if our kids don't get that protection and they don't get that education when they're young, it's going to affect them as they move forward, and that really contributes to this kind of cycle of bad things that we have here in New Mexico. So, as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns on these or any of the issues, really appreciate hearing from you, and hope everyone's having a great day. Bye.